Village Capital helps the ideas of early-stage entrepreneurs come to life. However, we believe that any organization can take advantage of our unique peer selection model to breed a culture of innovation. Meet Nancy. Nancy works at the entry level of a large corporation. She is shy, has limited presentation skills, and is afraid of suggesting new ideas to her boss when he might immediately reject them. However, Nancy has an interesting new product idea. The problem is there is no time or place for Nancy to share her idea and develop it further. Unsurprisingly, it is never tested. There are millions of people like Nancy in organizations with creative ideas that are never fleshed out or acted upon, because while it may be inefficient, the status quo is tolerable, because they don't think their ideas will be taken seriously, or because even when their feedback is heard, there are no internal resources dedicated to making their ideas reality. Village Capital's peer selection process helps organizations utilize innovative ideas like Nancy's, leveraging their entire workforce's creativity. Here's how. Management invites employees to voluntarily participate in small innovation sessions addressing a set of focal areas. The organization commits to supporting the top 1 or 2 ranked ideas each peer group selects. In these innovation sessions, employees like Nancy come together to present their ideas and gain a network of peers to help test them out. As Nancy gets weekly feedback, she improves her idea or product. At the end of the program, the peer group votes on the best ideas based on a set of pre-established criteria. Turns out, Nancy's is one of them. So, the company backs Nancy's product with enough internal resources to take it to the next level. Innovative ideas live under the radar in every organization. Through our tested peer selection model, harness the power of your human capital and create a culture of innovation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe. Our guest today is my good friend, Ross Baird, who is the executive director of Village Capital, one of the smartest people I know, and certainly one of the leaders in the social impact arena. Ross, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Devin. It's great to be here.
We're thrilled to have you. Ross, you wrote a brilliant piece last week. I want to jump in and talk to you about this because I'm sure you've been getting a lot of feedback on this piece. It was really quite critical of the Silicon Valley venture model. Why don't you, if you could, just in 30, 60 seconds, recap the key points that you wanted to make in that piece?
Yeah, so the way that we fund startups in society today is broken. Billions of dollars goes in the hands of a few people who live in a few cities. And because of the way we fund new ideas, they fund their friends, people they went to business school with, people they know from their social networks. And the outcome means we have most startups solving somewhat frivolous problems in the big picture. Instead of helping people figure out how to put food on the table, they help people figure out how to order food from the restaurant across the street if they've got enough disposable income to order food all the time. And so I wrote about a couple of ideas that are coming out of Silicon Valley that I think are completely out of touch with reality, but are the norm in the Silicon Valley echo chamber. And I think that for us to create enterprises that solve problems that most people in society have, we need to figure out how to back people who are in contact with how most people in the world live.
You made a point in the piece about the diversification of venture capital, or the lack of diversification in the current model. What were the statistics? Do you have those off the top of your head?
So 78% of startup investment goes to 3 U.S. states. Less than 5%, depending on your study, goes to women CEOs. Less than 3% goes to CEOs who are people of color. Now, as a white guy, I have nothing particularly against white guys, but white guys from a few cities are solving most of the problems, and people solve problems they can understand. And so the real problem with highly concentrated flow of startup funding is that most people who understand deep social problems just don't have access to resources to solve them.
Yeah, it's a fascinating dilemma. So what do you propose that we do to fix the venture capital model in the United States?
Yes, I think 3 things. I think one is the process by which we deploy capital. So we, Village Capital, have a peer selected investment process where instead of an investment committee making decisions under fluorescent lights behind closed doors with no real interaction with entrepreneurs. We have people who are actually solving problems in health, education, water, financial inclusion, making decisions. A more democratic process of decision making yields different results. For example, 40% of our portfolio CEOs are women compared to 5 in the average venture capital process. I think second is people. I think you need to change who's at the table in order to get different outcomes. So the reality is most, for example, Silicon Valley investors say they would like to have a more diverse pipeline. But if you look at the websites of most venture investors, they say, in order to get on our radar, a warm introduction or an introduction from someone we know is a great way to get to know us. And introduction to a venture capitalist requires that you know somebody who knows somebody with money. What if you've never had money and don't know other people with money? I think we need to change the way we think about the people that we're even considering for funding to begin with. And I think the third idea is place. So most investors say we like to sit on boards and we like to be involved, so we like to invest down the road. But if you have 80% of startup funding coming from 3 states and 78% going to 3 states, we've partnered on this initiative called The Rise of the Rest with AOL founder and his venture firm, Steve Case and his venture firm Revolution, that is focusing on the other 47 states and the District of Columbia that fight over 22% of the funding. And I think what we find is, if you care about solving problems in agriculture, it's probably not New York or Silicon Valley. It might be Louisville or St. Louis or Minneapolis that has insights into how to grow food. Or if you care about solving problems in health, Nashville is a spectacular place. Austin, Texas has insights in health that might not be coming out of New York City. And so changing the process, changing the people, and changing the place through which you look for new ideas are 3 different ways that you can create a little more evenly dispersed innovation.
You've talked about the peer selection model that you're using, and I understand that you're trying to incorporate that into the VilCap Communities model. Tell us a little bit about peer selection and how you're trying to build that into the VilCap Communities.
So Devin, think of how when you were in school, there was always the student who never did the reading and never did their homework, but like always knew exactly what to say when the teacher called on them, and you're like, they're not very good. Why do they keep getting the teacher's attention? And then think about the person in the back, usually a woman who did all the homework, did all the reading, but was really shy, never spoke up, and never got the credit for doing the work. And in fact, the first student might have copied off of the second student's homework. When you are in a peer group, you know who is great, who is not, who knows what they're talking about, who doesn't. And unfortunately, that first student tends to get venture financing a lot because they're very good at playing the fundraising game, even if they're not good at building a business. The second student tends to be bad at pitch fest, tends to be not particularly charismatic, and our funding industrial process doesn't yield a startup funded on the other end. And so peer selection puts entrepreneurs solving similar problems in a community together. You evaluate, it's a public rank. You can't vote for yourself, but you evaluate everybody else on how good they are. And what we find is the people who are in the best position to succeed, regardless of how charismatic or well-connected or great performers they are, tend to get resources. And so we've invested over $2 million over the last 5 years in companies using this peer selection model. We just closed a new $15 million venture fund to continue democratizing the process. But between our VilCap communities, we have an additional $1 million in local funding for local entrepreneurs committed entirely through peer review. So the entrepreneurs in Philadelphia will be picking who in Philadelphia gets a shot, and the entrepreneurs in Cincinnati will be picking who in Cincinnati gets a shot. What happens today is venture fund flies to Cincinnati from San Francisco, looks around, says that there's nothing good here, and leaves. Now we have people in the communities putting their own resources, and the entrepreneurs are deciding who gets a go at it.
It's interesting. Now, how do the entrepreneurs actually make the selection in your program?
So there's a huge gap in expectations between what investors are looking for and what entrepreneurs are looking for. And investors are very good at understanding risk and return. And when entrepreneurs aren't successful raising money, very often we think it's because entrepreneurs don't understand the expectations of investors. And that's a solvable problem. So we have in programming essentially an investor training where we teach entrepreneurs how to look at their own businesses and others through the lens of an investor. For example, whether or not your business will be profitable is a different conversation than whether or not your business will make money for investors. Entrepreneurs usually are fluent in the first, not as fluent in the second. We help companies become fluent in the second so they can say, not only am I a great business, but I'm a great deal for you as an investor. And so these companies go through this program. They learn how to evaluate themselves. They learn how to evaluate whether the other entrepreneurs are ready for investment or not. And at the end, 98% of our participants who don't get funding say they still would have done the program even though they didn't get the money, because seeing yourself through the eyes of an investor helps you realize, helps you speak the language of the people who have resources and bridge a really, really important gap we're seeing in the startup world.
Ross, tell us, if you can, give us your impact hack, some way that we can do more good in the world.
I would find an entrepreneur who, for whatever reason, doesn't have a seat at the table of the billions of dollars of funding flow. Maybe they're from a rural area and are a returning vet and don't know anybody with money, or maybe they live in Richmond, Virginia and have a great fintech solution, or maybe they're a woman, maybe they're for whatever reason they are underrepresented in who we're funding today, and figure out a way to help them. Send them an email to their website, even if it's info@website.com, and say, listen, I love what you're doing. Here's what I can offer. What do you need? So find a entrepreneur in the 24 hours after you see this video who, for whatever reason, is not in the mainstream combination, and just offer how you can help. They'll be shocked because no one's probably ever contacted them out of the blue, but you will be surprised if you hit up people out of the blue and say, love what you're doing.